now that Lumix have two brand new full frame cameras out, the S1R2 and now the S1ii, I thought it'd be helpful to go through some key differences to help you decide which one might be right for you. Lumix have not seen this video, I've not been paid, and this camera is on loan. This video is not sponsored by Lumix, however it is sponsored by Squarespace, which I shall talk about more in a bit. And because I think it's really cool, every photo you see in this video is taken straight from camera using the real-time LUT feature, using my own custom presets, because I don't have access to the raw files, so I can't edit them anyway. So I thought it'd be a great excuse to show you how great you can get your results in camera with the Lumix system. So the new cameras, externally they are blooming identical, and there are loads of really great upgrades from the S5 II cameras. I've done a full video on everything I love about the new design of these cameras, which I'll link in the description, but in a nutshell, you have a photo and video button, you have a tally lamp, you have a fully articulating screen, and you have a cool shutter closed thingy that shuts when you need to change lenses to keep your sensor safe. That's a scientific term. So if they're the same on the outside, what's the difference? Well, the main primary difference between these two new cameras is the sensor and the sort of style of shooting that you can expect from them both. The S1R2, which I'm filming on right now, has a huge 44 megapixel full frame sensor. So this is ideal if you want really high resolution images, perhaps you want to do studio work or portraiture or landscape photography, for example. And the benefit of all those megapixels is on the video side, it will also shoot up to 8K 30 frames a second in 16:9 ratio. The drawback of this high resolution sensor is we do have a little bit more rolling shutter to contend with, and because the files are so blooming big and the buffer isn't too generous, if you are shooting burst modes in photography, it will fill up quite quickly. The S1ii, on the other hand, has a 24 megapixel partially stacked sensor, and it has half the rolling shutter performance of the S1R2. So if that's something that has been a concern to you, this has been addressed and then some in this other camera. We get fewer megapixels for sure, but the burst modes are much more impressive, the buffer is incredibly generous, and we do still get 6K open gate on this camera. So no 8K on the S1ii, but you still get 6K, and that's what I'm filming in now. It's what I prefer to film in, and I think it's more than enough for my needs personally. And I've got to say, I went completely over the top with the burst modes shooting in my test shots because I found this camera to be an absolute joy to use in that regard, which I'll cover in more depth in this video. If you followed this trip on social media, you may have noticed that some things didn't quite go to plan. In Lisbon, when the plane arrived, we had a nationwide power cut and I lost my bag and I didn't get much sleep and all the traffic lights were off and it was all just a little bit chaotic. I've lovingly referred to it a few times as Lisbon Armageddon. And that's probably being a bit dramatic, but this is all to say something that I found quite funny. The camera event went ahead because Lumix are absolute troopers. In my notes, my sleep-deprived notes, I wrote S1R2 big, S1ii fast. And that's really oversimplified, of course, but in a nutshell, sleep-deprived Emily wasn't too far off. If you want a fast-performing camera, the S1ii is the one to go. If resolution and high definition is your bag, then the S1R2 is the way to go. So regarding the rolling shutter on the S1R2, I think a lot of this got blown out of proportion when this came out originally. I mean, of course, it's something that we need to keep in mind, but people were throwing around words like, it's unusable, and it's blooming not. Come on, it's absolutely fine. If you're shooting mid-speed subjects, like for instance a confetti shot at a wedding, it'll be absolutely blooming fine in both photography and video. The rolling shutter only really comes into effect in video if you're moving the camera really quickly, or if your subject is moving really quickly as well. So this is not the camera, the S1R2 is not the camera that I would ever choose for wildlife or sports photography. The S1ii, on the other hand, has a 70 frames per second electronic burst mode, which includes the subject detection and the phase detect autofocus throughout the burst mode as well, which is crazy. You also have the pre-burst modes in both cameras as well, so you can shoot up to 1.5 seconds beforehand. The way that that works is you're waiting for the action. Like for instance, when I was waiting for the BMXs, I tried putting my back to the ramp so that I couldn't really see when they were gonna go. So I used the pre-burst mode in that instance, and you half press the shutter, Once the action's happened, you press the shutter down and it'll bank up to 1.5 seconds before, and then however long you keep your finger down on the shutter afterwards. It honestly makes getting fast moving, high pressure shots pretty much foolproof. I don't think I got a single missed frame when I was shooting this mode all day on the S1 II. The S1R2 has 40 frames per second, and it does have the pre-burst modes. However, it only has a 70 frame buffer. So doing the maths, that's like just under 2 seconds of burst mode before you have to wait for the camera to sort itself out. So in reality, the S1R2 for burst modes and faster moving subjects, even rolling shutter aside, is not really practical. Whereas the S1 II has a huge 180 frame buffer. And of course, because it has less megapixels, the files are smaller, so things will copy over faster. And in the real world, that means you can get shooting again faster. Let me just quickly have a Dear Panasonic moment, because I do so appreciate the company that they do listen to the people that use their cameras, and I love that. And one thing I would love to see is more user controls over the electronic burst modes in this camera. We have 70 frames a second, which, yes, is incredibly impressive, wonderful. But if you don't use that mode, the only way down is to use the mechanical shutter, which is 10 frames a second. And there's a huge disparity here between 70 frames a second and 10. On the OM system cameras that I use, you have an option of 50 or 25 frames. Even on the Lumix G9 II, so I know you have it in you, Lumix, you have the option of 60 frames per second or 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter. And having gone to Kenya and the Faroe Islands and done lots of wildlife photography in recent years, I think 20 to 25 frames a second is probably more than enough for most circumstances. And the benefit of that is your 180 frame buffer in the S1R2 would now last for ages. You could do burst shot after burst shot after burst shot and not have to wait for the camera to clear the buffer. And I find that much more useful in the real world than having 70 frames a second, where you'll probably throw out 99% of them in editing anyway. So yeah, please, Lumix, give us some more user controls over that. I'd really appreciate it. One phrase that I use a lot when I talk about Lumix cameras with these features versus other cameras that I've used is you will get the shot. What you will not likely get is the shot after the shot, if that makes sense. Because the autofocus is reliable, you've got a burst mode for days, you've got the pre-burst mode, you will 100% get the first shot. But then if something happens immediately after, the camera is like, writing to card, and you miss the second shot. So I do appreciate that a lot of Lumix users are more interested in the video side of things. And quite right, these are excellent hybrid cameras. So what are the differences in the S1 II versus the S1 R2? If I get through this whole video without saying either of them wrong, someone give me a medal in the comments. So I've gone through 8K in the R versus only 6K in the S1 II. What else is new? The biggest upgrade for me, and something that genuinely I really appreciate, is the autofocus is faster and more reliable in 120 frames 4K on the S1 II versus the S1R2. I found that it was pulsing and losing the subject in the R, whereas here in the S1 II, we have much more reliable sticky autofocus in these faster burst modes, probably down to the readout speed of the sensor and the way that they're just engineered slightly differently. For me, I would rather have reliable autofocus in slow motion over 8K any day, because you don't generally take slow-mo footage of something that's slow and easy to track, do you? If something's already slow, you're not going to be shooting at 120 frames per second. So I would argue that it's the mode where you need the most reliable autofocus and tracking capabilities. So there's a huge update in that regard in the new S1 II. Another autofocus tweak is we now have a brand new subject detection mode called Urban Sports. So think human subject detection, but tweaked to be faster. So BMX riders, break dancers, people moving quickly. This mode worked pretty much flawlessly when I was testing it on the BMX riders and the break dancers in Lisbon. So this new subject detection mode, and also that it has animal detect as well, coupled with the partially stacked sensor and the incredible buffer size and the incredible burst modes, we have an amazing sports and wildlife camera for photography and video. We just need more blooming native lenses, really, don't we? We don't have too many super zooms in the L mount. I know Sigma have some great lenses, but I really hope to see some more super zooms in the Lumix lineup going forward, because I mean, otherwise, what's the point in having all these cool features that are geared towards birds in flight or sports photography and not having the glass to back it up? So I assume it'll be on the horizon, but yeah, we need it like now. I was hoping we'd get something released at the same time as this camera, actually, because that would be a perfect bundle to buy it with. But alas, we do have a new lens though, which I'll talk about in a bit. So which do I personally prefer? I think you can tell in this video a mile away that for my needs and my use cases and what I enjoy to shoot, the S1 II is way more up my street. If I was still doing 35 weddings a year, I would probably get one of each, because I do like the idea of having all of the megapixels and those really high fidelity photos in the S1R2, and the video features are far from shabby. But for me, I think the S1 II is wonderful. I don't necessarily need 8K, but I do need better autofocus in slow motion modes. I do need a bigger buffer, and these benefits far outweigh the high resolution for me. However, I can see how, if you were always shooting in the studio, or if you were a wedding photographer, or you're a landscape photographer and you want all the details in the world, the S1R2 is ideal. Not for me, it's probably overkill for me, as I said in my original video, but the S1 II, oof, I'm in. I'm totally in. Quick fire exciting things. If you are in the UK or the EU and you are an early adopter of either of these cameras, you will get an extended warranty, I think for 5 years, which is crazy. Lumix are super duper dedicated to L mount and the reliability of their products, and they want to put the money where the mouth is and give you an extended warranty. And if you've already ordered or pre-ordered the S1R2 since March 2025, for the next couple of weeks, you will be able to also benefit from that extended warranty as well, because if I'd bought that camera early and this didn't apply to me, I'd be quite annoyed. So yay! Early adopters for both cameras will get this benefit in the UK and EU. And the new lens I was talking about, we have a 20-60 f2.8, and I think it's been a long time coming. We have a lot of different stocks available on the L mount system. We have the slower, more basic stock lens. We have the little tiny pancake lens, which is slower again. And we have the lovely 24-105 f4, which again, not the fastest in the world, but it's a very nice lens. If you wanted a 2.8, you either had to get the L mount S Pro or look to Sigma. So this one is great. It's a good little sweet spot in between. You don't have to spend the earth for the Pro badged lens, and it's a little bit smaller and a little bit more compact as well compared to both the Sigma and the Lumix Pro 2.8. Every photo in this video has been taken with the 2.8, and it is a delight. Here's one that made me go, woo! When I heard about this update, it's the Lumix Flow app will give you very similar low latency performance now wirelessly as compared to wired with the USB-C. Having it wired, it's fine, it does the job. If you have your monitor on the camera, that's great. But if you're in a talking head sort of scenario like me, or you're a little bit further away from the camera, having the Flow app monitor wireless is wonderful. And it now works on iPad, and I personally use it on my big chunky 10 or 11 inch Android tablet. So yay, we can monitor ourselves on big screens, wirelessly change settings, good stuff. I love the Lumix Flow app, and it needs to get more attention because it's brilliant. Let's quickly talk about Squarespace, the sponsor of this video. I love Squarespace and I've used them for many years. I used to run my wedding photography and videography business through Squarespace, and now I have microphonenerds.com, where you can buy real-time LUT compatible presets that will work with your delightful new cameras. But seriously, Squarespace is super user-friendly, really stylish templates that you can use in just a few clicks. It makes everything super easy for you. I personally love that Squarespace can grow with you. I started microphonenerds.com just as a simple blog to chat about nerdy camera stuff, and then over time it's expanded to my mailing list and my store and my workshops. So whatever you're interested in, you can start small, and Squarespace Squarespace will grow with you. If you would like to get started with Squarespace, you can go to this URL and you can use the code MicroPhoneNerds for a discount on your first purchase of a website or a domain. So let me know what you think of the S1R2 and the S1 II. Which do you prefer and why? And check out my S1R2 video to go through all of my favourite tweaks in the new hardware. And I also have a video on real-time LUT and how that will work for photo and video, and how to convert Lightroom presets into LUTs if that's something that you're interested in. So I'll link both of those in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I get my bag back from Lisbon one day.